also tourism, but let's hold on to Grand Bahama, being a little selfish.
Okay.
Did you mention I'm a Grand Bahama ambassador as well? Tell the people.
Oh, okay. I think you just
Grand Bahama Island ambassador.
So we're really excited to be with you, and of course this island ambassador over here is going to be helping me to share some of this good information with you about hurricane preparedness. So this show is really important. Make sure that you share it with those that certainly need to hear about this across the island of Grand Bahama, and of course the information is also very helpful for other persons that may be preparing for hurricane preparedness at this time as well. So we want to get into it. You don't?
No. But we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just was wondering if you care to share. So at this time, it's certainly a pleasure to welcome, I believe, for the very first time around the Focus Forward Roundtable. Not the very first time for the company. We're always very delighted to have the company, the Grand Bahama Power Company. But today we are very excited to be able to speak to the Director of Customer Operations at the Grand Bahama Power Company, Mr. Jared Moss. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And also the Director of Regulatory Affairs at the Grand Bahama Power Company, Ms. Brittany Pratt. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you guys here with us. And of course, we want to get into some really good discussions today because, as you know, hurricane season would have started June 1. Officially, and of course we're trying to continue to help the residents and the people of Grand Bahama to prepare, and a big part of that is being able to share with them exactly what's going on your end. And we all know everybody is always very concerned about power,
electricity,
and water,
yes,
and getting help when they need it, and wanting to know where they can go. And so we want to get into the conversation, and Mr. Moss, if we can just start with you. Tell us a little bit about the work that GBPC does when you guys think about doing assessments, looking at the vulnerability of the systems and what it is that we're preparing for. How does that look at GBPC?
So for us, that typically looks like, with us beginning our normal pre-storm inspections. This consists of us basically looking after all of those, the poles, the hardware, all the critical infrastructure around that area and the substations. And basically we do a full-out assessment and try to identify any potential areas of concern. And we address them prior to the storm. And from that, we have what we call ESPR, Storm Preparedness Meeting, where we kind of get together, organize roles within that upcoming storm season, and we have a drill at the end of it to kind of make sure all persons are aware of what's happening from that area.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about investments because I know GBPC is constantly working, and you guys know what it is that needs to be done. But just wanting to ask about what investments may have been made over time to be able to strengthen the electrical grid against hurricane force winds and flooding. We know that that's a big deal for us as well.
Yes, for us
so
as well.
Forgive us for asking these questions. But of course, tell us a little bit about that.
So basically how that looks is over the past few years, we've done extensive work on our infrastructure, our grid. We've upgraded a lot of our poles. Initially we had class 3 poles, and we went on to move on to class 1, which is more robust for hurricane season in terms of just the wind force and everything else. We also did extensive work around our substations. We did a lot of upgrades in the substations in order to, to add added protection in the event of a storm and just for regular day-to-day activity around the grid. From there, we also took some time and did a lot of automation monitoring. We added some monitoring equipment to kind of have a better assessment of what's going on, to be able to isolate a lot better and obviously be able to respond to any outages on the back end. And this obviously helps not only with the storm preparation, but even throughout the days, the normal days on the island, when you guys are experiencing any kind of outages and so forth.
Since you're leading right there, you know how to ask you, right?
Oh, boy.
Okay, so you have all this automation to find out where the outages are. How do you determine who gets turned on first? How do you determine where do you go and address that situation? Should I tell you where I live? I'll do that after. Off camera.
Off camera.
After the show. No, but I'd like to, how do you prioritize, power, reconnection?
So that's essentially, the first priority is always safety. So post-storm, we always look after, obviously, our teams will be going onto those roads as well as the public, the general public. So once we understand and how that looks, typically is us removing any down lines, poles, and so forth. From there, we typically move on to a lot of the essential services, the hospitals, the water company, the police, basically the shelters and so forth. So we look at organizing those personnel to make sure that they're in good standing. Then we move on to a lot of the larger customer, the larger feeders, to try to get the most customers on. However, sometimes things don't always line up that way because of some conditions, but for the most part, that's how we typically try to organize it, and we obviously try to keep the customers informed as we go about those repairs and so on.
And I like the fact that you talked about keeping customers informed, because that actually leads right into my next question. Just before we get over to Ms. Pratt, you know, during the course, well, after a storm, everybody wants to know, when is my power going to be on?
Yeah,
but there may be persons that they may have certain concerns and things that they think that you should be aware of. So what is the actual method that people should use to communicate with the power company, or methods?
Well, the number one method right now, we do have a 24-hour hotline. They can always reach out to that hotline. That's 352-8411. We have an agent always available to take any customer concerns. The next area would be the social media area, which is the most largest used area. Yeah, because I mean, some people. Yes, correct. So that typically, so we do have a Facebook page and we do have an Instagram page where we keep up to date, and we do blast prior to storm to kind of get everybody understanding those mechanisms and how they can go about sharing any information that they may come across.
So they can follow on social media, but if they were to put a note or send you a message from social media, someone would be able to receive that as well?
That's monitored at 24 hours as well. We got somebody looking at that, and then we do jobs based off of the information we get from them.
On national TV.
Yes.
You know, that's, people are like, what? They were like, I sent the message like 3 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No one's replied.
So they'll start sending messages now, and of course GBPC will be on top of that, we're sure. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Moss, and of course just a few more things and we'll come back to you during the course of the show, but we certainly want to get over to Ms. Pratt, the Director of Regulatory Affairs, and again, thank you so much for being with us.
That's a big title. I need to know what she does.
Give her opportunity.
No problem at all. So what we try to do under this title is we ensure that we comply with all of the standards and regulations that we have agreed to under our license. That ensures that we always put our customers first. So this is ensuring that we put in all of our components to make sure we have reliable, safe, consistent energy for our customers, and that they are billed accordingly. Ensure that we follow rules and regulations such as environmental policies that may be in place from the government or from the GBPA itself.
Okay. So regulatory, you got it now.
I got another question.
What's the other question?
What are some of the obligations does the power company have regarding outage restoration timelines and things like that? I need to know.
Most definitely. So our timelines are, one, again, like Mr. Moss sort of mentioned, based on the infrastructure that is damaged. And so there are timelines stipulated, but we always communicate. So we don't wait to say, okay, the deadline is 24 hours. No, we keep our stakeholders, you, the customers, and our regulators informed as to what is happening when it's happening. And so these would be anything that would have impacted our vulnerable customers, the hospitals, like Mr. Moss sort of mentioned, the clinics, airports, anything of that nature, but also, as most recently you would have seen with the fires, anything that have impacted large substation major customers.
It's like you need to move. Close to an essential service.
Yes.
They're the first ones to get on.
All the time.
You know?
Yes.
But you need that, right? You obviously understand why you would need that.
Well, I can't lie to you, because my store is downtown. Whenever a hurricane would come, we'd be spending days in the store at Signature Choices because I know power was on.
Good.
Okay, yeah.
So you talked a little bit about communication, and you talk about some of the regulatory responsibilities that you have. How do you ensure? Because we talked about communication as well. And communication is also one of the #1 things after a storm. Everyone wants to be heard. Everybody has a concern. They want it to be addressed. From your perspective, how do you ensure that customers do actually receive that transparent communication, the service that they need, particularly during the disruptions, and to ensure sure that those restoration timelines that may be given by a technical team who may have some challenges, how do you ensure that that information is actually being sent, received, and the work is completely gone through the loop, it's finished?
No problem. So in our emergency storm response plan, we do have a communication protocol and policy. So each year prior to, we review and assess the communications and the process flow. And so one of the things we want to ensure is that we're hearing our customers who may have called through our call center, also who may have sent in either notifications via social media. What we do is we have one central area or group that processes all of those concerns. That is then forwarded to our planning team, which ultimately ensures our crews are able to deliver on those acts. So again, not all the time we are able to assess or address the concerns right away, because there may be some critical infrastructure that has to be either inspected, repaired prior to. But what we try to do is in that event also communicate with transparency what those issues are, so our customers are able to make the decisions, whether that is going to their shop for the meantime or going to another location where there is power available, because we do know that we have some vulnerable customers that need access to power 24/7, whether it's for medication or other personal needs. And so via our website, radios, text messages, things of that nature, we try to keep our customers informed.
I think it's important that you brought that up, simply because a lot of people, myself included, sometimes get really upset when I see certain areas energized.
Yes.
And I'm like, why?
I think we all do. Like,
Yes.
how did you energize over there? Oh. Sometimes it happens where across the street is
Yes.
energized.
Right.
And you're sitting here like, so what else?
Yes.
You're not on that
Yes.
part of the grid yet.
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
okay. So it's important that you share that information, like Linda, you would have asked, and make sure that communicate that to the
Yes.
public so they are aware, and it gives a little bit more peace of mind. And I want to ask another question. I know we've talked about the communication, but sometimes even though you put a communication notice on your socials or whatever the case may be, if you send out a communication
Yes.
and it says that these places should be on and certain pockets are not, would you want those persons in those pockets to still communicate with you that they're off, or you know that they are off?
So there are two parts to that. Sometimes we do know that they are off right away, because we do have systems that monitor, and Mr. Moss can add on to that. However, we do like that feedback and that timely feedback. So we would still like them to communicate that they're off. We know that it's important. Sometimes there's an isolated outage, meaning that you may be the only person that is off in that area. However, according to our system, we would have restored that area.
Okay.
And so we do want that feedback still.
So that's it. It says keep nagging.
Yes.
Keep nagging.
And regular
What a way,
vernacular.
what a way to put it. But I know we're getting ready to wind down just a bit, so I want to come around for final thoughts. But one more question I have to ask you, because I'm sure that there are some things that, from your expert perspective, you know what it takes to be able to supply power, to restore power, to get people into that full recovery mode in that regard. What are some of the things that you would want residents to know or understand when it comes to the work that you do? I know sometimes you may even feel, and your teams may feel like we're being so hard on you, they're being hard on the power company, but maybe it's because some of the things that we should know, we don't know.
Right.
What might some of those things be, if you care to share, if any at all?
Well, from my standpoint, obviously being out there and the restoration mode, one thing I would always, ask customers is to, give us a chance to kind of understand, what other issues we have to address, and we will do our best to communicate that to you guys in order, to keep you, understanding the, step by step how we're going about those issues. Another thing, obviously, is sometimes for the safety of the team, just the backfeed and stuff, some people begin to now put on these generators and stuff like that, and that poses a risk to our team, especially if it's not done from a licensed electrician or somebody who has that understanding. So those are kind of the things we always have to be mindful of and look at, and they impact the restoration, particularly when we do find them. So it's always good that, customers understand that it's a process, it takes time, but we will do our best to ensure that they know what's happening on as best as we can.
I guess, quite frankly, if power's off, the men and women who are working in a power company, their power is off too.
Exactly. Right.
So
Exactly.
I won't beat you up. I mean, I beat up, the people ask me the questions to ask you, but I understand specifically, my husband being an electrician, he always says people don't understand. Sometimes one section may be off and you got to cut that whole area off because you want to keep the team safe. And I understand. I think the average person doesn't realize that. We're talking about electricity. One wrong move.
And it's over. Yeah, it's over.
Yeah.
So,
You got to be careful. Any final thoughts coming from you, Mr. Moss?
good. I'm happy you guys. I'm happy to be a part of the show today. It's very entertaining and I like it.
And to share this information
Thank
with
you
the
so
public.
much. Thank you so much for being with us. And Ms. Pratt, anything from you? Anything we didn't cover or anything you'd like to talk about?
Just a reminder to our customers that, they can also assist us in preparing for a more safe, efficient restoration by just taking some precautions around their homes themselves, reporting any down or low-hanging lines prior to storms. Anything of that nature would also help us to prepare to make the system more robust prior to a storm arrival and assist with a smoother, safer restoration process.
So to report any low-hanging power lines, where should they call?
Yes. They should call our call center, 352-8411.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us. We appreciate the information. And of course, we want to remind you guys, if in fact you need to get some assistance, you need to report anything or share anything with the Grand Bahama Power Company, you can call 352-8411 so that you can get the assistance that you may need. Again, Mr. Moss, Ms. Pratt, always a pleasure to have the Grand Bahama Power Company on the show. And don't forget, follow them on their social media as well, which is very important during storm time, right?
Yes, that's what you have.
And throughout the season, follow these social media channels. Ensure that you have the Grand Bahama Port Authority on the channel. You have even Invest Grand Bahama because we take information there, Grand Bahama Power Company. And yes, so lots of good things for you to be able to take advantage of based on what it is that you need. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break. We have so much more information to share with you with some wonderful people that really, they're just so informed about the things that you need to know. So I hope you're taking notes, and I also hope that you're sharing this if you're watching it on social media. I'm hoping you're sharing this or you're telling someone to be able to watch us later on this evening, ZNS, 8 p.m. You could catch Cable 12 or perhaps ILTV and Eyewitness News. We're everywhere, but make sure that you share this very important information with everyone so that we can all be prepared together. We'll be right back right after this.
Welcome to the Party Parlor Supply and Rental. At the Party Parlor, we provide a variety of party themes for your birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, baby showers, gender reveals, any occasion. If you're celebrating it, we have something for it. We also provide customization services for your party favors, shirts, tumblers, and much more. For persons in the creative industry, such as your bakers, we carry fondant, sprinkles, chocolates, flavoring. For crafters, we have your vinyls, your transfer papers, sublimation papers, and your blanks. For event planners, we have your chair covers, your tablecloths, napkins. For any other needs, you can call us at 809-2272. Remember, if you have something to celebrate, we have something for it.
Welcome to Freeport, the reawakened, the reimagined, the rebirth, the Renaissance capital of the Bahamas. Over $1.5 billion in investments. Marinas, cruise ports, downtown revitalization, residential developments. We're putting the city on the map. Want to know more? Just log on. Your future is only a click away.
We are having a wonderful day here at Focus Forward because we are doing our very best to be able to help you plan and prepare. We're on our hurricane preparedness show, and of course we've brought in all of the experts and persons from around town that can share all of the information that you need so that you can plan and prepare as well. And so we want to welcome, joining us today, Mrs. Nakira Wilshcombe, the Vice President of Building and Development Services at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Mr. Troy McIntosh, the Deputy Director of City Management at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and coming all the way from the Grand Bahama Utility Company, Ms. Olethea Gardner, who is the Wellfield Officer. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you. That's fine. I was about to ask you if you came out of the well. I thought she was going to say that, you know? You know, but
Well, you know, the Wellfields are kind of far, so.
Yeah, I got questions. You know, part of hurricane preparedness is making sure we have food and snacks. I didn't say anybody bring any, but anyway, in this next segment we'll talk about that because you got to have hurricane snacks. But I want to start with you, Nakira. I mean, people want to know, what is the GBPA doing to assess vulnerabilities in the infrastructure? How are you preparing for now, for June? Because you know it's hurricane season right now.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, what are you doing and what have you done?
Okay. So we take the hurricane season very seriously, and our preparation actually begins from about March or February. First of all, looking internally at some of the things that we need to correct or to improve upon and strengthen. And so we do a lot of training with the staff. We make sure that they are very familiar with our subdivisions, that we are keeping in contact with project managers, making sure that their properties are also well prepared as we go into the hurricane season. So a lot of work starts with us, and then we are joined also by our city maintenance section, who will talk about some of the infrastructural assessments that we also do to make sure that the city is ready.
Okay.
Do you work along with any other agencies? And I'm thinking, Madam Vice President, from just a little bit of a higher level. Does the Grand Bahama Port Authority work along with any other local agencies in terms of preparation, maybe attending meetings, sharing of information?
Yes, we do. The Grand Bahama Power Company is one of our partners, sanitation services, as well as the Grand Bahama Utility Company, because we realize that teamwork certainly makes the work go well after a storm. And so we organize ourselves, we have different discussions. We also look at the utility companies, the BTC, Cable Bahamas, all of those companies to ensure that we have a plan. We also talk with industry partners as well, just to make sure that they have plans in place. You know, if something were to happen in their facilities, that everyone is on board, everyone understands how we are going to quickly get into action after a storm event passes.
So that's after a storm. What about before the storm? Sometimes there's, you know, maybe like an evacuation notice that's sent out. How does the GBPA ensure that these evacuations are processed and done in a timely and, of course, I would say in a orderly fashion?
Right, so the plans are developed by these different partners, and so we assess these plans to make sure that if necessary and they need to be activated, we can all work. And so even though we're referring sometimes to after storm, the most important thing is to make sure that we're prepared before the storm, as you correctly said. And so looking at the plans, making sure that we tweak the plans and we do whatever it takes to make sure that they, you know, go through the plans seamlessly when we actually do need them. And so if there are things that need to be corrected in the facilities, if there are waste plans that need to be developed in terms of how they're dealing with their waste and what have you, all of these things are discussed. Evacuation plans are also discussed with some of the industry partners as well, and as well as our other partners that we would work with and talk with during the storm.
So how will you communicate that information to me as the resident here in GB? Like, how are you going to let me know about the evacuation plans in the high-risk areas?
Well, this is certainly one method of us doing these shows, and so we love the opportunity to do these shows. We also have a lot of our information sometimes on our website to make people aware. We also want you to stay, because obviously we work with the Department of Disaster Recovery Unit as well, NEMA, and so we also want to make sure that we are interacting with them. And a lot of what we do, we feed into that department because they are the overall agency that should get that information out to the general public.
So we know it's a continuous message from the Disaster Preparedness Agency into the GBPA, and you make sure to push that out
As
to all
much
of the
as we can.
residents.
Yes.
Now, do you know that that is how Focus Forward started? after Hurricane Matthew.
Of course I know that.
Okay, because you're asking the question,
I need
but
to
that
make
is how we
sure.
started being able to work certainly with the Grand Bahama Port Authority and also all of these other organizations based on their relationships and the work that they do in preparedness to be able to help to share the news. That, of course, was over radio, but we've grown since then, but we still work on radio and post a storm. That's probably the method that would also be used as well.
And using the social media, people are able to go
Yes.
online,
Yes.
social media, and be able to find out information because they want to know, because we're going to hold you responsible, just so you know.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
I like to make sure you're aware.
Mr. McIntosh, if we can just come over to you, I think Mrs. Wilshcombe would have started the discussions about the things that's happening around the city in terms of preparedness. But just to have a deeper dive with you, when we talk about taking a look at infrastructure within the city and some of the things that people really care about after a storm, road accessibility, what's happening with the bridges and the drainage systems. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do to be able to help the city prepare.
Sure. So with any team or any country or any city, one of the most vital things that you should have in place is tools, having the right tools. Having the right tools to do the right job or whatever the job that you may face. And so we have a section within Building Development Services that provides us with tools to make a lot of what we do a whole lot more efficient. And so that department is Geographical Information Systems, which is GIS section. And so as a result of Matthew, Dorian, we have been able to deploy some tools to allow us to have better partnership with some of our service providers, GBUC, even sanitation services. So for example, in the city, one of the things that we've done with this tool is map all of our drains, right? Which makes it easier for maintenance. So we know that, okay, we went in drain A 2 years ago. We know every 4 years we'd have to go back. Being able to know this information, have it in a place that you can readily access it, that's one. Two, as it relates to, let's say, recovery after hurricane, being able to go out into subdivisions, assess very quickly, bring that data up, upload it electronically, and send it to the power company for energizing. So earlier you had a conversation with the power company talking about how do you know when you're going to be energized. But because of this relationship now and the communication with the tool, we can say, Alice had some damages, don't turn her on. or Alice didn't have some damages, you can turn the power on.
Yay.
And it's an efficient process compared to years past. Years past, there was a lot of paperwork. There was some miscommunication and sometimes, or confusion, so whatever it have be, but lesson learned. We were able to take and use these tools now to do what we have to do as a department efficiently. And so whether it's drains, whether it's tree trimming, whether it's garbage collection, whether it's bulk trash, we use the tools to determine what we need to do it efficiently.
I love those tools, and efficiency is very, very important. Quality assurance, that is. Just plug that in there. So I know you have a question, but I also have a question for him.
Okay.
So let me just jump the gun, and then we'll let you come right in, because we talked about those tools. And of course, we know that we've seen the water, perhaps one of the worst water storms we've had. We've seen one of the worst wind storms we've had. And so in using those tools, and particularly leaning on the water side, when we talk about drainage, has there been any work done or completed within the city of Freeport as it relates to those drains that you can now see through your tools? Because we want to make sure that when the water comes down, it goes all the way down and it goes out.
Yes.
So please.
Ask a question.
Yes. Just asking for a friend.
Not a problem. And so Dorian was a very difficult storm when it comes to drainage. It really inundated our systems for, it took us actually 3 years to assess and to service all of our drains in the city. And we have over 500 of them plus.
Oh, y'all was busy.
We were very busy. It was busy, but in addition to that, it was expensive. Okay, because there's a cost. And so we were able to complete all of the drains that were impacted by Dorian. And we're at a point now where it's now been 5 years later, 6 years later almost, and we need to now reassess some of those drains to make sure that they're working. We haven't had so much of a rainy season this year, but we know there are months that, are problematic ones that we need to go back into. But the team has really worked hard to make sure that all of the drains that needed to be serviced have been serviced.
Good. I got another question.
That is
for
good
you.
news.
Another question?
Yes.
Okay. So what protocols are currently in place for clearing debris and restoring essential services immediately after hurricane? Immediately.
Yes. So,
After
so that's a very good question. You know, we've had 15 years to fine-tune our plan, our post-hurricane plan, and I think we have it down to the T. And so one of the things the Kira mentioned earlier is we do some internal assessments to make sure that our ducks are lined up. And one of those such things is to make sure that our list of contractors are current. So what we do early in the year is we contact them to make sure that the phone numbers we have for whether it's truckers, whether it's IT providers, whether it's dump trucks, that all of those numbers are available. So here's what happens. During a situation, let's say we're going to be impacted, once we get the all clear, I'm pretty much one of those persons that are either out and about or maybe out first, where we are communicating with our service provider, sanitation service, say, hey, listen, we have this roadblock, we have that roadblock, we need this tree move, we need to get in contact with GBPC to make sure that the line that we see down is dealt with before we can get the trucks out on the streets to start clearing. And so once we would have done the main roads, as he mentioned earlier, all of our main service industry, the hospital, the airport, the harbor roads cleared, we then start going into the micro areas, which is your subdivisions. And then we then cut the city up pretty much into our service providers to go and now start dealing with and collecting debris and moving debris and that kind of thing. And it's done in a very systematic way. I can tell you for Matthew, it took us 2 weeks to clear the city. Dorian was a little more difficult because what happened with Dorian was persons who were impacted by flood, it took them a while to have the insurance company pay out and so on and so forth. So that took us 18 months to really have everything fully done. But with the lay of the land, we have maps where trucks should enter a subdivision, how they should exit a subdivision. And so on a daily basis, sanitation does that for your bulk trash collection. And so they know the lay of the land. So they have the lead, and they may have service providers or extra trucks working along with them because they know how to go in, they know how to come out. And so that plan we've been using now for the last couple of years.
Okay, so it sounds like you got all the drains working, you've got the debris removal system sorted out, and your plans are ready and in place.
Yes.
So if we were to get a notice of a hurricane coming, y'all ain't sweating, we ready. We just push a button and activate the plans.
I just want to add and ask Troy just to explain a little bit, though, how the drains work. I think sometimes, you know, the expectations of our citizenry or residents need to be also advised as to how the drains are expected to work after storms. So if Troy can elaborate on that.
And so, thank you, Nikira. That's very good. So there is this view that the drain can hold unlimited amount of water. That's
what
not
she
true.
thinks. I don't think that.
That's not true.
I don't believe that.
And so the drain has a capacity, right? It's like a bathtub. It has a drain, but once you plug that, water goes in, and if you don't turn that faucet off, it rims over. It spills into the house and starts to obviously move where it shouldn't. So what happens with a drain is there's two things. You have what you call a water table. Now, depending on where you live, that water table can be high or can be low. When you have a rainy system that's bringing in maybe 2 inches of rain for a couple hours, that drain can only hold 1,600 gallons of water. That's about 10 to 15 bathtubs full of water. Okay? And at some point, that's not a whole lot.
I'm thinking it's really
In a
not a lot.
storm,
And at some point, all of those drains in your city that are impacted are going to reach capacity, especially if there's a high tide. Okay? And so now we're saying to persons, if you see water on the road, don't drive through it because you don't know how high it is.
Okay.
Right? You can get stalled out. But don't be alarmed if the road is flooding as a result of rain system for 2 hours or maybe an hour and a half and you had tremendous amount of rain. The key thing is 48 hours later, that water should not be on the road. If it is, then that's something we need to know.
I can call you.
All right.
You can call me.
So we're going to continue to work with city management and get updates over time based on things that we need to know coming into the hurricane season. Well, now that we're in the hurricane season, but to continually be prepared. And of course, we want to come over to Ms. Gardner here, and we want to talk a little bit about GBUC because we know the Grand Bahama Utility and Water, we are all always concerned about how we're going to be able to access water, what is the quality of the water. Let's be honest, these are some of the things that people are wanting to know about. So tell us how GBUC has been working to plan and prepare for this particular season.
Well, similar to what my table mates were saying, there are plans. There's always been plans. We have our incident action plan that we refer to each and every year. We update, we revise. Of course, we have to pivot with each storm because every storm is different. The last 2 storms we had, like we said, we had a water storm one year and then we had a wind storm the storms before that. So we have a plan that's in place, our incident action plan, but we ensure that we follow our regular maintenance plan. So in terms of making sure that we continue with our maintenance in terms of our well fields, where our guys are always somewhere out there, making sure that we have our items in place as it relates to our equipment, making sure that we have our memorandums of understanding in place with our different entities that we need to work along with, the sanitation services, the GB Powers, our vendors that we normally work with to make sure that we have everything up and running. We continue, our team is one of those teams that before, during, and after a storm, we're out there. So we just want to make sure that we continue to keep our guys safe, but make sure that we do everything based on our action plan that we've set in place.
Is there anything related to your plans or things that you're working on to ensure that there's a way to perhaps maintain the quality of the water? I mean, I know storms are unpredictable, right? But is there anything, any contingency plan that you guys may have in place in the event that our water is impacted?
So in terms of the quality of the water, we will continue to do the testing. We continue to do daily testing, which is part of our regular maintenance. So in terms of quality, we will continue, as I said, to test. If it gets to the point where we may be deemed non-potable, we have provisions in place. So we will have our containers set up where we'll be able to provide potable water to any areas that may be out of potable standards. We will do everything in our power to ensure potability. Now, in the case of the previous storm, of course, we were inundated with salt water. So, of course, our levels changed. That was something that we couldn't control, but we were able to work on it as soon as possible to make sure that we were able to provide the best quality of water to our residents immediately following the storm. Based on the area that would be impacted, if there are any areas impacted, because we are continuing to pray and do the dance, that we do not have a hurricane this season. But if there are any areas that are impacted, we'll ensure that we have water stations set up around the island for wherever we would need to have those issues. But like I said, we'll continue to do our daily testing to make sure that our water falls within our standards.
Okay, so we talked about the fact that there's been some changes in storing. We are on a reverse osmosis system.
Yes.
A lot of people aren't quite aware. For those that aren't quite aware what that means, just explain it a little bit for us, and how are you protecting that?
So with the reverse osmosis system, what it pretty much does is it's almost like a mesh screen. So we're taking water up from the ground, which is a part of our normal process, and we run it through a filter. And the filter is small enough where it takes out any of the salts, or a lot of the salts, so it brings it down to a certain level or a certain quality of water. We're then mixing that with our source water, so we're testing throughout the whole process. This is the water that we're sending out into the systems to our residents. During the storm, we're going to ensure as much as possible, and as something that we've been doing, we're building back better. So we've now included another reverse osmosis system, and we've ensured that we've built it higher. So in the case, and we're not speaking it, but in the case that there may be another high storm in terms of water level, that our reverse osmosis system is not impacted. We're doing everything that we possibly can as it relates to that. If it gets to the point where, we have to be mindful of what's happening to our systems, we will have to, look at our plan again and see what would be the best course of action. If we need to then start pulling back in terms of how much water we put out into the system. If we need to start pulling back in terms of, just reminding our residents, let's be mindful that we are going through a storm, but let's make sure that we are keeping sure that we have enough water supply for everybody. So we will be sending out those messages as well, just to make sure that people stay and understand that we're going to do the best that we can to get us back to where we need to be. But definitely making sure that our new systems are in place and able to take whatever it is that we come across with this storm. Praying that we have a very light season this year.
And I believe we're all praying that we have a very light season, like you said, so that we can be able to manage and get over the hurricane season. But listen, we have to wrap up this particular segment. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Any additional information that you have or you would like to share, please share it with us so that we can get it out on our social media and we can ensure that the community and everybody that needs to know is able to find out more about hurricane preparedness from your perspective. So thank you guys so much. Listen, we have even more to come, more guests joining us here on the show, of course, giving you all of the information that you need in this hurricane season so that you can continue to plan and prepare. So we are going to be right back right after this break.
Welcome to Freeport, the reawakened, the reimagined, the rebirth, the Renaissance capital of the Bahamas. Over $1.5 billion in investments. Marinas, cruise ports, downtown revitalization, residential developments. We're putting the city on the map. Want to know more? Just log on. Your future is only a click away.
Welcome back to Focus Forward. We're on our final segment and having a wonderful day on this hurricane preparedness show. And of course, we are so delighted to have all of
Hurricane wind.
to have all of the professionals, all of the persons that work in our city to be able to help us prepare and also help us recover in the event of a storm. And so we're so delighted and very excited, mind you, to welcome to our round table the disaster manager at the Grand Bahama Red Cross, Mr. Hilton Cash. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Of course, every year we have to have Mr. Cash, and also another very important gentleman who works with the Grand Bahama Development Company in the capacity as assistant manager over at Lucaya Service Company, Mr. Corey Cartwright. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
One of my favorites.
I so appreciate that.
You are.
So he's the guy to make sure that all of the work gets done.
My
Certainly on the ground. Yes, yes, yes.
Sure.
Yes, and they do a great job. They do a great job. So we're really happy to have you guys here on the show. And we want to have some very open conversations as we are talking about hurricane preparedness. So Mr. Cash, if we can start with you, tell us a little bit about some of the primary responsibilities of the Grand Bahama Red Cross as it relates to hurricane preparation.
Okay, well, the Grand Bahama Red Cross Center is a non-government organization. We support the government, all its efforts during times of disaster. So we work closely with the DRMA and the Consultative Committee and all of its efforts to render service to the community. So whichever part of the community is affected, we are there to assist.
You know, the people think of the Red Cross whenever there's a disaster. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's hurricane or fire, whatever, they think of the Red Cross. And they think of you assisting all the persons in the community. So with the local government and other emergency services, how do you interact with them? Do you go out to them? Do they come into you? Do you have regular meetings? How does that work?
Well, there is in existence a committee, a consultative committee, and the Bahamas Red Cross Society has a representative on that committee, and we also is involved in some of the planning before and after a disaster.
What are some of the resources that people can think perhaps might be available? I know sometimes we think, oh, it's the Red Cross, they work with the government, they have everything.
Right.
But what are some of the resources that may be available to individuals, whether it be food, whether it be some sort of medical aid? What are some of the things that you can use to be able to help people after a storm?
Well, one of our greatest resources are our volunteers. You know, we, throughout the year, we maintain a volunteer pool, and we ensure that included in that volunteer pool, we have expertise or training to meet the various needs during a disaster. For example, in the area of shelter, we work closely with the Department of Social Services to assist them in managing shelters. So we ensure that our shelter managers are properly trained. And we also, in the area of first aid, we also ensure that we have adequate first aid volunteers to assist. Also, in assessments, we also assist in assessments as after a disaster. And so we maintain a pool of volunteers who we can call at any time to assist in times of disaster.
Well, thank you to those volunteers. Now, I know we're already in the hurricane season, but is the Red Cross always looking for more volunteers? That was the first thing that you popped out of your mouth, like volunteers. We need bodies. We need people on the ground.
You can never have sufficient volunteers.
Okay.
So
the door's still open.
The door is still open. So we're always looking for volunteers.
Okay. What about the distribution of supplies? Does the Bahamas Red Cross assist with things like that, giving food items and items that people might need?
Yes, we assist in distribution of supplies, water, ice, clothing, or as the need arises. And we want to thank those sponsors also that sponsors us on many occasions to assist with the needs of the community.
That's another thing about a non-governmental agency,
Right.
non-profit agency, which means you rely on the community support and the government support. So
Exactly.
right now, what are some things that people are watching? Well, not people, if they're watching, what would you like them to know they can donate? Other than we know we need people, we need bodies, we know we need money. What are some other things that you would ask them that they can donate to the Red Cross?
Well, what do you think about, let's say, during a disaster, in the area of shelter, there's always a need for blankets, sleeping material.
Okay.
There's always a need for that because you find that a lot of the shelteries, they come, and on most occasions, they come, well, ill-prepared.
Right.
So you always find you need additional blankets for the kids to sleep on, or something that they can rest their head for a night or two.
Okay.
So that would be useful for us.
Okay, so we need shelter supplies. Well, I
Yes.
can vouch for that. During Dorian, we went to the shelter and we came out the house with nothing. We're like, so I understand. So you need those things and water, I presume,
Water as
and
well.
things like that,
Yes,
and supplies,
yes,
those kind
water.
of supplies, and they can just bring that over to the Red
To
Cross.
the Red Cross, yes.
And the location for the Red Cross.
The Red Cross is located on Jobson Avenue, and it's the easy way to find it is to locate Western Bakery, which is on the highway, and it's just behind Western Bakery on the back road.
So we get the food in the front and go right to the back.
Yes.
See how you made it easier to find it, right?
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Cash. We're going to come right back to you. We want to come over to Mr. Cartwright from the Grand Bahama Development Company and
He's my
Lucaya
favorite
Service
guy,
Company.
right?
You did say that. You did say that. Mr. Cartwright, tell us about the state of readiness as it relates to the Grand Bahama Development Company and Lucaya Service Company.
Well,
for hurricane.
dear, that's a good question. First of all, thank you for having me back on the show. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
As for a state of readiness, in every hurricane season, we always start hurricane preparation, not in June, but as the year progresses from January. We also ensure that we have dealt with the infrastructure, first of all, the bridges, even though some people may have some concerns right now, but we are working on that bridge in any event. But we always start with the bridges and also look at signage along the way. Drainage is always an ongoing assessment in our department to ensure that people understand the importance of drains. Drains reach a capacity regardless of anybody's thought on it. And once it reaches capacity, it's no good to anybody at the end of the day. We have also ensured that we have our team members already selected. Our core team is very small, but at the end of the day, we have a large holding when it comes to our contract workers who we select on the ground, like a wall construction or sanitation. They are very heavy hitters inside the game with us, which makes our team complement much larger than what it is. We can never be prepared 100%, but we are standing ready in the event of any storm and prepared to act. We are 100% prepared to act. So as you would know that we spend a lot of time after the storm being passed, once the assessment team started, once the disaster relief management team gives us the okay to enter into the assessment mode, we go and assess the streets, clear what needs to be cleared, and then the all clear will be given once we have completed what we are doing.
Okay, so you would have made some adjustments, obviously, and some maintenance upgrades since Dorian. What are some things that we may not know that you would have done that we know will help in this upcoming hurricane season?
Lessons learned.
Okay.
Especially for families that have small children. We expect for you to have a bag that's packed for them, ready to go, simple as a bottle of water, a few snacks, because the team did spend some time rescuing individuals out in the field, and we learned, as you said, Alex, earlier, you left the house with nothing.
Yes.
You have to ensure that documents are prepared, medication is inside the bag, all sealed, watertight, ready to go at any moment, even down to a life vest. It is important to incorporate it, especially if you're going to be in one of those areas that are not too sure what's going to happen, because Dorian did creep up on us. We didn't expect the level of devastation that happened to actually happen. So, you know, incorporate the life vest with the safety light on it. It will help, because sometimes with the wind passing with all the rain and everything, it's very difficult to see you or hear you, especially if you're a distance from where we're coming through to assist you by machine, jet ski, or even a tractor trailer sometimes.
It must sound like I need to have a bullhorn with me in part of my hurricane preparedness.
Yes, yes.
Whatever you can. Think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know those little horns they have at graduations?
Right.
They're
Yes.
very
Make sure I have
important,
one of
very
those.
important to have, because they,
At Bellevue Gifts.
yeah.
You've been shopping around
I'm
town.
telling you, buy local, shop at home. Yes.
Right, now I'm going to ask you a
They have
question I
those right
asked
at the counter.
everybody else.
No problem.
You know, I
No
need
problem.
to know, how do I, twofold, okay? I need to know, how do I get to you when it's my subdivision that, you know, is the problem? And how soon, how do we know how do you know, who do you address first in your subdivision, the area that you have responsibility over? How do you, you know, decide who gets, you know, sorted out first?
Well, we are very coordinated. First of all, there's only one response team. That's a disaster relief management team from the government side of the house. We have a team member that's in the EOC at that time who gives us information, and we share information back, especially if it's something that's going to be credible to the public at large. Once the storm has dissipated, at the first sign of the eye being over us, we have assessment teams that actually work within our command center that run out, have a look, take a peek here and there to ensure what is going on, and any relevant information that we find will be reported back to the EOC, and of course they disseminate it across radio to those people who are listening and those who probably still have WhatsApp messages at that time, to ensure that they have the right and proper information. Once the eye has already passed, now it's time to hunker back down. And once that has passed, then the assessment teams spread out just like a blanket. We are all over the place. We're working along with the government teams, and we're there from a support base. And with our resources, we're able to especially select machinery to have at different locations so we could be proactive in what we need to do. Because sometimes we can't wait for machinery to come from one direction to reach another.
Because they're going to have roads blocked and different things like that.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the things that you would say to residents as they plan and prepare now in terms of preparing their properties? One of the things that we know after a storm, particularly with what's on the outside of your home and what's around your home, those things either they could get washed away, they could get blown away. What are some of the tips that you would give residents, particularly in the Lucaya area, although everybody's watching, but what would you say to them so that they can plan and prepare their homes specifically?
Ensure that your house is storm ready. Whether it's hurricane shutters, whether it's generator, especially a standby generator that sits on the outside that powers your home up automatically once power is lost. They are important to have. If you do not have those things, the next thing now is to ensure that your house is not inside an area where it floods. If you are in a flooding area, you have to ensure that you actually move from that or have a secondary location to go by. We have a very active season coming this season. So we know at the end of the day, from what we have seen from statistics, we can take a Cat 2 without any issues. I don't want to officially go on record, but this is just what we see from the statistics of the data that we have reviewed. Anything over a Cat 2, we have to pray to God, ensure that the best is given to us. We have to also ensure that any missiles that will be used to brace against the home, destroy the home, because as you saw in Dorian, there was a lot of houses that lost their structure itself, and you just had holes inside it from the force of the water. We have to ensure that somebody comes out to inspect your home. And we're not just saying from building development services, but we're also asking from a contractor's point, you have somebody assess your home. Ensure that the insurance is up to date and your house is appraised. All right? Once we move from that phase, we move into the medical field. We want to ensure that you have all of the necessary medication or supplies that you would need in the event of some mishap or some unforeseen event happens, you're able to deal with yourself and not necessarily make a way to the round, because you may never know what you'll encounter along the way. Okay. Sometimes it's best for us to take the first aid classes at the Red Cross so we know how to care for our own within that time. It doesn't hurt, and as Mr. Cash said, you can never turn away too much volunteers, so you can be a volunteer at home as well, you know? So there are many ways that we can look at the lessons learned from Dorian and be much prepared for it. But we want to ensure that everybody stay home, stay inside. Wait for the proper authorities to say the all clear is given. We have experienced some mishaps of people venture seeking or checking on this one, checking on that one, and they had to be rescued themselves. So we ask the public at large to just mind what you do in this season and know that the life you save may be your own.
I was about to ask you.
Thank you so much for that.
As a closing thought from you, but you pretty much closed it up saying, you know, basically saying that people are like, oh, we're in hurricane season again. Why are we having this hurricane show again and every year? And I think it's important because we need to be reminded.
Because it's been a year at this point since we've had these discussions. And although we're learning that all of the teams would have been planning and preparing from January and from February, we weren't.
No,
and so the information is, the information is very important.
And anticipating you to do your job.
Yes,
as we are with the Red Cross.
Mr. Cash, again, your closing thoughts, anything that you would like to share that you would want people to know from the Grand Bahama Red Cross?
Well, what I want to emphasize to the public is that they be aware of the location of the shelter nearest to where they live. They need to be aware of that. Whether you're going to use the shelter or not, it's important for you to know where that shelter is located and also know the route you will take to get there.
Okay. Know where the shelter is located.
And the route you got to take.
Know the route you got to take to make sure that you get there. Very, very good information coming from both of you, and thank you so much for joining us today and sharing. And of course, you know, at Focus Forward, we always extend the invite. We'd love to have you back so that you can continue to share any information that you have. And we are very willing to share anything on social media that you think would be beneficial to the residents of Grand Bahama. Listen, guys, you heard it here first. Focus Forward, having all of the necessary folks around the table to be able to talk about hurricane preparedness and all of the things that you need to know. Of course, you can follow our social media pages, Grand Bahama Port Authority. You can follow the Grand Bahama Development Company, Grand Bahama Red Cross, Bahamas Red Cross, Grand Bahama Power Company, Grand Bahama Utility Company. All of these places, right? Just to ensure that you have the information that you need. Let us plan and prepare together. Alex, I think we had a great show today. And we certainly want to thank all of our sponsors, Invest Grand Bahama. We want to thank K-Beauty, Visible Changes, Looking Fabulous, everybody that comes together always to be able to assist and support us with this show. And, you know, it's been a good one.
It is. It's informative, and I think that's the most important thing we want to share, that every year during the hurricane season, these shows are important, and we're going to do it every year because you need to be reminded, as we're reminded, to know that our teams are working behind the scenes from the beginning of the year so that they can respond to you as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you for inviting us into your offices, your businesses, and your homes. Grand Bahama's best talk show, Focus Forward, is always here for you. Until next time, I'm Glendia Sweeting.
And I'm Alex Thompson.
Informing you on the positive things that happen when you focus forward. You're listening to Focus Focus Forward, sponsored by Invest Grand Bahama. Like us on Facebook at Invest Grand Bahama Small Business Bureau to stay updated.
And drop a business card at the Grand Bahama Port Authority receptionist desk to have your business featured on our show. Tune in next Thursday,
Same time,
same place,
for Focus Forward.
At Fort Charlotte, I'm Garnell James. This is that